The election of 1960 represents a watershed in the history of presidential politics. And the main reason why is its unique feature, and that is the televising of presidential debates. The Democrats are going to nominate JFK, a young senator from Massachusetts. His program was that of the liberal New Deal tradition, have the government more and regulating the economy and doing more for people. He campaigned on the principle that the Republicans drifted too much, and they were too slow to respond to problems. And Kennedy explained that he was trying to get the country back to moving again. It was kind of a little bit like the Republicans in the 1920s, talking about getting back to normalcy. The Democrats in this election were saying that the country drifted long enough and we needed to get things moving again. But as I said, the election of 1960's major feature is the fact that presidential debates are actually televised. Today we take them for granted, right? I mean, there's usually around 3 presidential debates, and then there's 1 vice presidential debate in most presidential years, right? And we watch them, and it's usually just about 2-minute sound bites between the two. So it's basically, a couple of hour advertisement for both campaigns, right? But they're televised. We take that for granted. Back in 1960, this is the first time they ever did it. And so you have both candidates on the stage at the same time debating one another in front of a television audience, in addition to a radio audience. And the funny thing is that a lot of people think that when it comes down to it, even though Nixon was much more informed and better prepared than Kennedy when it came to the issues and his ideas, Kennedy wins on the TV, mainly because of the fact that he looks better. I mean, generally speaking, when we think about JFK, we think of a guy. He kind of looks like he's in his prime. After all, he's one of the youngest presidents ever elected, right? And look, if you watch the debates, if you Google search, presidential debates in 1960, and take a look at the pictures of the two men, you definitely see a difference. All right, why is there a difference between the two men in terms of their appearance? Well, Nixon was actually in the hospital. He injured his knee and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Now he's inside all damn day, right? And he's going to be living off of hospital food, and so he's going to be losing weight. He's going to he's going to start getting pale. He's going to, and if you look at a picture of him in the election of 1960 debates, he kind of looks like death warmed over. To be honest, he really does. You put on top of that a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. That is what guys look like at 5 o'clock after shaving in the morning. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they look like they need to shave again. Well, Nixon looked like that all the time. Now look at Kennedy. Kennedy was campaigning in California in early September, right before these debates. He's tanned. He's confident. He's well rested, right? I mean, Nixon knew Kennedy personally because Nixon, as vice president, was the president of the Senate, and Kennedy's a senator. Therefore, the two knew each other, right? And in fact, Nixon will later remark, "I never saw him looking so fit," right? And if you look at a picture of Kennedy in 1960, the man's got swag. Okay, there's no way you can deny that. Right? He fills out his suit perfectly. It's as if he was born in the darn thing. Nixon has to basically make sure that his suit is nice and tight, right? As if he basically bought it off the coat rack at Kohl's and didn't do any sort of thing in terms of tailoring it, right? Because he had lost so much weight. But as I said, when it comes to the issues, Nixon knew them better. So the radio audience, those that were listening to it, thought Nixon had won. The television audience, on the other hand, thought that Kennedy did a better job. He at least looked better than Nixon. So they thought that Kennedy had won. And it's kind of the difference between the two mediums. In radio, we use our imaginations when we start listening to the radio. I think there's a reason why when remember that movie War of the Worlds, it came out on radio one time, and the person that read it, basically scared the bejesus out of everybody because they thought it was really happening. Right? But now go watch War of the Worlds. You can do the original 1950s era, or you can do the Tom Cruise one and watch it. And yeah, it's scary. Maybe the kids, it's scary, the idea of these aliens, but you don't see anybody freaking out like the world's about to end, right? Well, that's the power of radio. The power of radio makes us use our imagination. Whereas TV, we don't have to use our imagination. We're seeing it right now. You're seeing it right there, right now, right? I mean, there's a number of, number of terms for TV, including idiot box. And it's a good term for it because the fact it makes us turn into idiots because of the fact we don't need to use our imagination when we're watching this, right? Whereas on the radio, we have to picture it in our mind. Compare it again to, say, a baseball or a football game. Listening to sports, listening to it on the radio, and you hear the play-by-play call, and you can just imagine the guys running on the court and whatnot, and you're all tense, and it's more exciting to listen to the radio, and then compare it to the TV, right? Yeah, you got the play-by-play caller, but it's like you're narrating what I'm watching. It's almost superfluous, right? And you get these nice little factoids in the middle of the whole thing. That's what happened here. The people who used their imaginations and listened rather than watched thought Nixon won. The people who watched the TV and didn't have to really conjure up much are going to say that Kennedy won. But nevertheless, the election of 1960 is one of the closest elections in the United States history. The popular vote was as close as 1/5 of 1% of a vote. All right, that's how close these two men are. Of course, what elects the president? The Electoral College. And Kennedy had that in hand. But nevertheless, the popular vote was very close in the election of 1960.